Section 2 of Que Quiere and 18 more poems. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Que Quiere and 18 more poems by William Carlos Williams. Section 2. Conquest, dedicated to F.W. Hard chilly colors, straw gray, frost gray, the gray of frozen ground, and you, O sun, close above the horizon. It is I hold you, half against the sky, half against a black tree trunk, icily resplendent. Lie there, blue city, mine at last, rimming the banked blue-gray, and rise, indescribable, smoky yellow, into the overpowering white. Portrait of a young man with a bad heart. Have I seen her? Only through the window across the street. If I go meeting her on the corner, some damn fool will go blabbing it to the old man, and she'll get hell. He's a queer old bastard. Every time he sees me, you'd think I wanted to kill him. But I figure it out. It's best to let things stay as they are. For a while, at least. It's hard giving up the thing you want most in the world, but with this damn pump of mine, liable to give out. She's a good kid, and I'd hate to hurt her, but if she can get over it, be the best thing. Keller geigen Dam. Witness, would you, one more young man, in the evening of his love, hurrying to confession, steps down a gutter, crosses a street, goes in at a doorway, opens for you like some great flower, a room filled with lamplight, or whirls himself obediently to the curl of a hill some wind-dancing afternoon, lies for you in the futile darkness of a wall, sets stars dancing to the crack of a leaf, and leaning his head away, snuffs, secretly, the bitter powder from his thumb's hollow, takes your blessing and goes home to bed. Witness instead, whether you like it or not, a dark vinegar-smelling place from which trickles the chuckle of beginning laughter. Strikes midnight. Smell. O strong, ridged, and deeply hollowed nose of mine, what will you not be smelling? What tactless asses we are, you and I, bony nose, always indiscriminate, always unashamed, and now it is the souring flowers, the bedraggled poplars, a festering pulp on the wet earth beneath them. With what deep thirst we quicken our desires to that rank odor of a passing springtime. Can you not be decent? Can you not reserve your ardors for something less unlovely? What girl will care for us, do you think, if we continue in these ways? Must you taste everything? Must you know everything? Must you have a part in everything? Ballet. Are you not weary, great gold cross, shining in the wind? Are you not weary of seeing the stars turning over you, and the sun going to his rest, and you frozen with a great lie that leaves you rigid as a knight on a marble coffin? And you, higher still, robin, untwisting a song from the bare-topped twigs, are you not weary of labor, even the labor of a song? Come down, join me, for I am lonely. First it will be a quiet pace to ease our stiffness, but as the west yellows, you will be ready. Here in the middle of the roadway we will fling ourselves round with dust lilies till we are bound in their twining stems. We will tear their flowers with arms flashing, and when the astonished stars push aside their curtains, they will see us fall exhausted, where wheels and the pounding feet of horses will crush forth our laughter. Sympathetic portrait of a child. The murderer's little daughter, who is barely 10 years old, jerks her shoulders right and left, so as to catch a glimpse of me without turning round. Her skinny little arms wrap themselves this way, then that, reversing about her body. Nervously, she crushes her straw hat about her eyes and tilts her head to deepen the shadow, smiling excitedly. As best as she can, she hides herself in the full sunlight, her cordy legs writhing beneath the little flowered dress that leaves them bare from mid-thigh to ankle. Why has she chosen me for the knife that darts along her smile? The ogre. Sweet child, little girl with well-shaped legs, you cannot touch the thoughts I put over and under and around you. This is fortunate, for they would burn you to an ash otherwise. Your petals would be quite curled up. This is all beyond you, no doubt, yet you do feel the brushings of the fine needles. The tentative lines of your whole body prove it to me. So does your fear of me, your shyness. Likewise the toy baby cart that you were pushing, and besides, Mother has begun to dress your hair in a knot. These are my excuses. Riposte. Love is like water or the air, my townspeople. It cleanses and dissipates evil gases. It is like poetry, too, and for the same reasons. Love is so precious, my townspeople, that if I were you, I would have it under lock and key, like the air or the Atlantic, or like poetry. The old men. Old men who have studied every leg show in the city, old men cut from touch by the perfumed music, polished or fleeced skulls that stand before the whole theatre in silent attitudes of attention, old men who have taken precedence over young men, and even over dark-faced husbands whose minds are a street with arc lights. Solitary old men for whom we find no excuses. I bow my head in shame for those who malign you. Old men, the peaceful beer of impotence be yours. Pastoral. If I say I have heard voices, who will believe me? None has dipped his hand in the black waters of the sky, nor picked the yellow lilies that sway on their clear stems, and no tree has waited long enough, nor still enough, to touch fingers with the moon. I looked, and there were little frogs with puffed-out throats, singing in the slime. Spring strains. In a tissue-thin monotone of blue-gray buds, crowded erect with desire against the sky, tense blue-gray twigs slenderly anchoring them down, drawing them in, two blue-gray birds chasing a third struggle in circles, angles, swift convergings to a point that bursts instantly. Vibrant, bowing limbs pull downward, sucking in the sky that bulges from behind, plastering itself against them in packed rifts, rock, blue and dirty orange. But hold hard, rigid jointed trees. The blinding and red-edged sun blur, creeping energy, concentrated counterforce. Weld sky, buds, trees, rivets them in one puckering hold, sticks through, pulls the whole counter-pulling mass upward, to the right, locks even the opaque, not yet defined ground in a terrific drag that is loosening the very taproots. On a tissue-thin monotone of blue-gray buds, two blue-gray birds chasing a third at full cry, now they are flung outward and up, disappearing suddenly. Trees. Crooked, black tree on your little gray-black hillock, ridiculously raised one step toward the infinite summits of the night. Even you, the few gray stars, draw upward into a vague melody of harsh threads. Bent as you are from straining against the bitter horizontals of a north wind, there below you how easily the long yellow notes of poplars flow upward in a descending scale, each note secure in its own posture, singularly woven. All voices are blent willingly against the heaving contrabass of the dark, but you alone warp yourself passionately to one side in your eagerness. The portrait in grays. Will it never be possible to separate you from your grayness? Must you be always sinking backward into your gray-brown landscapes, and trees always in the distance, always against a gray sky. Must I be always moving counter to you? Is there no place where we can be at peace together, and the motion of our drawing apart be altogether taken up? I see myself standing upon your shoulders, touching a gray, broken sky. But you, weighted down with me, yet gripping my ankles, move laboriously on where it is level and undisturbed by colors. Invitation. You who had the sense to choose me such a mother, you who had the indifference to create me, you who went to some pains to leave hands off me in the formative stages, I thank you most for that, perhaps. But you who with an iron head, first, fiercest, and with strongest love, brutalized me into strength, old dewlap, I have reached the stage where I am teaching myself to laugh. Come on, take a walk with me. Divertimiento. Miserable little woman in a brown coat, quit whining. My hand for you. We'll skip down the tin cornices of Main Street, flicking the dull roof lawn with our toe tips, hop clear of the bank, a pinwheel round the white flagpole, and I'll sing you the while a thing to split your sides about Johann Sebastian Bach, the father of music, who had 3 wives and 22 children. January morning. Sweet. 1. I have discovered that most of the beauties of travel are due to the strange hours we keep to see them. The domes of the Church of the Paulist Fathers in Weehawken against a smoky dawn, the heart stirred, are beautiful as St. Peter's approached after years of anticipation. 2. Though the operation was postponed, I saw the tall probationers in their tan uniforms hurrying to breakfast. 3. And from basement entries, neatly coiffed, middle-aged gentlemen with orderly mustaches and well-brushed coats. 4. And the sun, dipping into the avenue, streaking the tops of the irregular red houselets, and the gay shadows dropping and dropping. 5. And a young horse with a green bed-quilt on his withers shaking his head, bared teeth and nozzle high in the air. 6. And a semicircle of dirt-colored men about a fire bursting from an old ash can. 7. And the worn blue car rails, like the sky, gleaming among the cobbles. 8. And the rickety ferry boat, Arden. What an object to be called Arden among the great piers on the ever-new river. Put me a touchstone at the wheel, white gulls, and we'll follow the ghost of the half-moon to the Northwest Passage and through, at Albany, for all that. 9. Exquisite brown waves, long circlets of silver moving over you, enough with crumbling ice crusts among you. The sky has come down to you, lighter than tiny bubbles, face to face with you. His spirit is a white gull with delicate pink feet and a snowy breast for you to hold to your lips delicately. 10. The young doctor is dancing with happiness in the sparkling wind, alone at the prow of the ferry. He notices the curdy barnacles and broken ice crusts left at the ship's base by the low tide, and thinks of summer and green shell-crusted ledges among the emerald eelgrass. 11. Who knows the Palisades as I do, knows the river breaks east from them above the city, but they continue south under the sky to bear a crest of little peering houses that brighten with dawn behind the moody, water-loving giants of Manhattan. 12. Long yellow rushes bending above the white snow patches, purple and gold ribbon of the distant wood. What an angle you make with each other as you lie there in contemplation. 13. Work hard all your young days, and they'll find you too, Some morning, staring up under your chiffronet at its warped basswood bottom, and your soul out among the little sparrows behind the shutter. 14. And the flapping flags are at half-mast for the dead admiral. 15. All this was for you, old woman. I wanted to write a poem that you would understand, for what good is it to me if you can't understand it? But you got to try hard. But, well, you know how the young girls run giggling on Park Avenue after dark when they ought to be home in bed. Well, that's the way it is with me, somehow. To a solitary disciple. Rather notice, mon cher, that the moon is tilted above the point of the steeple than that its color is shell-pink. Rather observe that it is early morning than that the sky is smooth as a turquoise. Rather grasp how the dark converging lines of the steeple meet at the pinnacle, perceive how its little ornament tries to stop them. See how it fails. See how the converging lines of the hexagonal spire escape upward, receding, dividing. Sepals that guard and contain the flower. Observe how motionless the eaten moon lies in the protecting lines. It is true, in the light colors of morning, brownstone and slate shine orange and dark blue. But observe the oppressive weight of the squat edifice. Observe the jasmine lightness of the moon. Dedication for a plot of ground. This plot of ground, facing the waters of this inlet, is dedicated to the living presence of Emily Richardson Welcome, who was born in England, married, lost her husband, and with her 5-year-old son sailed for New York in a two-master, was driven to the Azores, ran adrift on Fire Island Shoal, met her second husband in a Brooklyn boarding house, went with him to Puerto Rico, bore 3 more children, lost her second husband, lived hard for 8 years in St. Thomas, Puerto Rico, San Domingo, followed the oldest son to New York, lost her daughter, lost her baby, seized the 2 boys of the oldest son by the second marriage, mothered them, they being motherless, fought for them against the other grandmother and the aunts, brought them here summer after summer, defended herself here against thieves, storms, sun, fire, against flies, against girls that came smelling about, against drought, against weeds, storm tides, neighbors, weasels that stole her chickens, against the weakness of her own hands, against the growing strength of the boys, against wind, against the stones, against trespassers, against rents, against her own mind. She grubbed this earth with her own hands, domineered over this grass plot, blackguarded her oldest son into buying it, lived here 15 years, attained a final loneliness. And if you could bring nothing to this place but your carcass, keep out. K. McB. You exquisite chunk of mud, Kathleen, just like any other chunk of mud, especially in April. Curl up round their shoes when they try to step on you, spoil the polish. I shall laugh till I am sick at their amazement. Do they expect the ground to be always solid? Give them the slip then. Let them sit in you. Soil their pants. Teach them a dignity that is dignity, the dignity of mud. Lie basking in the sun then, fast asleep. Even become dust on occasion. Love Song. I lie here thinking of you. The stain of love is upon the world. Yellow, 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 it eats into the leaves, smears with saffron the horned branches that lean heavily against a smooth purple sky. There is no light, only a honey-thick stain that drips from leaf to leaf and limb to limb, spoiling the colors of the whole world. You far off there, under the wine-red selvage of the west. The Wanderer, a Rococo study. Advent. Even in the time when as yet I had no certain knowledge of her, She sprang from the nest, a young crow, whose first flight circled the forest. I know now how then she showed me her mind, reaching out to the horizon. She close above the tree-tops, I saw her eyes straining at the new distance, and as the woods fell from her flying, likewise they fell from me as I followed, so that I strongly guessed all that I must put from me, to come through ready for the high courses. But one day, crossing the ferry, with the great towers of Manhattan before me, out on the prow with the sea wind blowing, I had been wearying many questions, which she had put on to try me. How shall I be a mirror to this modernity? When lo, in a rush, dragging a blunt boat on the yielding river, suddenly I saw her, and she waved me from the white wet and mist of her playing. She cried me, "Hiya, here I am, son. See how strong my little finger is. Can I not swim well? I can fly too." And with that a great seagull went to the left, vanishing with a wild cry. But in my mind all the persons of Godhead followed after. Clarity. "Come," cried my mind, and by her might that was upon us we flew above the river, seeking her, grey gulls among the white, in the air speaking as she had willed it. "I am given," cried I. "Now I know it. I know now all my time is forspent. For me one face is all the world, for I have seen her at last, this day, in whom age and age is united, indifferent, out of sequence, marvellously, saving alone that one sequence which is the beauty of all the world. For surely either there in the rolling smoke spheres below us, or here with us in the air intercircling, certainly somewhere here about us, I know she is revealing these things." And as gulls we flew, and with soft cries we seemed to speak, flying. It is she, the mighty, recreating the whole world, this the first day of wonders. She is attiring herself before me, taking shape before me for worship, a red leaf that falls upon a stone. It is she of whom I told you, old forgiveness, unreconcilable, that high wanderer of byways, walking imperious in beggary. At her throat is loose gold, a single chain from among many. On her bent fingers are rings from which the stones are fallen. Her wrists wear a diminished state. Her ankles are bare. Toward the river, is it she there? And we swerve clamorously downward. I will take my peace in her henceforth. Broadway. It was then she struck from behind in mid-air as with the edge of a great wing, and instantly down the mists of my eyes there came crowds walking, men as visions with expressionless, animate faces, empty men with shell-thin bodies, jostling close above the gutter, hasting nowhere. And then for the first time I really saw her, really scented the sweat of her presence, and fell back sickened, ominous, old, painted, with bright lips and lewd Jew's eyes, her might strapped in by a corset to give her age youth. Perfect in her will to be young, she had covered the Godhead to go beside me. Silent, her voice entered at my eyes, and my astonished thought followed her easily. Well, do their eyes shine? Do their clothes fit? These live, I tell you. Old men with red cheeks, young men in gay suits, see them. Dogged, quivering, impassive, well, are these the ones you envied? At which I answered her, "Marvelous old queen, grant me power to catch something of this day's air and sun into your service, that these toilers after peace and after pleasure may turn to you, worshippers at all hours." But she sniffed upon the words warily. Yet I persisted, watching for an answer. "To you, horrible old woman, who know all fires out of the bodies of all men that walk with lust at heart. To you, O mighty, crafty prowler, after the youth of all cities, drunk with the sight of thy archness, all the youth that come to you, you having the knowledge rather than to those uninitiate, to you, marvelous old queen, give me always a new marriage. But she laughed loudly. A new grip upon those garments that brushed me in days gone by on beach, lawn, and forest. May I be lifted still, up and out of terror, up from before the death living around me, torn up continually and carried whatever way the head of your whim is, a burr upon those streaming tatters. But the night had fallen. She stilled me and led me away. Patterson, The Strike. At the first peep of dawn she roused me. I rose trembling at the change which the night saw. For there, wretchedly brooding in a corner, from which her old eyes glittered fiercely. "Go," she said, and I hurried shivering out into the deserted streets of Patterson. That night she came again, hovering in rags within the filmy ceiling. "Great Queen, bless me with thy tatters. You are blessed. Go on." Hot for savagery, sucking the air, I went into the city, out again, baffled onto the mountain, back into the city. Nowhere the subtle, everywhere the electric. A short bread line before a hitherto empty tea shop. No questions, all stood patiently, dominated by one idea, something that carried them as they are always wanting to be carried. But what is it, I asked those nearest to me, this thing heretofore unobtainable that they seem so clever to have put on now? Why, since I have failed them, can it be anything but their own brood? Can it be anything but brutality? On that at least they're united. That at least is their bean soup, their calm bread, and a few luxuries. But in me, more sensitive, marvelous old queen, it sank deep into the blood that I rose upon the tense air, enjoying the dusty fight. Heavy drink were the low sloping foreheads, the flat skulls with the unkempt black or blonde hair, the ugly legs of the young girls, pistons too powerful for delicacy, the women's wrists, the men's arms, red, used to heat and cold, to toss quartered beeves and barrels and milk cans and crates of fruit, faces all knotted up like burls on oaks, grasping, fox-snouted, thick-lipped, sagging breasts and protruding stomachs, rasping voices, filthy habits with the hands. Nowhere you, everywhere the electric, ugly, venomous, gigantic, tossing me as a great father his helpless infant till it shriek with ecstasy and its eyes roll and its tongue hangs out. I'm at peace again, old queen. I listen clearer now. Abroad. Never, even in a dream, have I winged so high, nor so well as with her, she leading me by the hand, that first day on the Jersey mountains. And never shall I forget the trembling interest with which I heard her voice in a low thunder. "You are safe here. Look, child, look open mouth." The patch of road between the steep bramble banks, the tree in the wind, the White House there, the sky. Speak to men of these concerning me. For never while you permit them to ignore me, in these shall the full of my freed voice come grappling the ear with intent. Never while the air's clear coolness is seized to be a coat for pettiness. Never while richness of greenery stands a shield for prurient minds. Never, permitting these things unchallenged, shall my voice of leaves and vari-colored bark come free through. At which, knowing her solitude, I shouted over the country below me, "Waken, my people, to the boughs green with ripening fruit within you. Wake to the myriad cinquefoil in the waving grass of your minds. Waken to the silent phoebe nest under the eaves of your spirit." But she, stooping nearer the shifting hills, spoke again. "Look there. See them, there in the oat field with the horses. See them there, bowed by their passions, crushed down, that have been raised as a roof beam. The weight of the sky is upon them, under which all roof beams crumble. There is none but the single roof beam. There is no love bears against the great firefly." At this I looked up at the sun, then shouted again with all the might I had, but my voice was a seed in the wind. Then she, the old one, laughing, seized me, and whirling about bore back to the city, upward, still laughing, until the great towers stood above the marshland, wheeling beneath, the little creeks, the mallows that I picked as a boy, the Hackensack, so quiet that seemed so broad formerly, the crawling trains, the cedar swamp on the one side, all so old, so familiar, so new now to my marveling eyes as we passed, invisible. Soothsay, 8 days went by, 8 days, comforted by no nights, until finally, would you behold yourself old, beloved? I was pierced, yet I consented gladly, for I knew it could not be otherwise. And she, behold yourself old, sustained in strength, wielding might in gripped surges, not bodying the sun in weak leaps, but holding way over rockish men, with fern-free fingers on their little crags, their hollows, the new Atlas, to bear them for pride and for mockery. Behold yourself old, winding with slow might, a vine among oaks, to the thin tops, leaving the leafless leaved, bearing purple clusters. Behold yourself old, birds are behind you. You are the wind coming that stills birds, shakes the leaves in booming polyphony, slow, winning high amid the knocking of boughs, evenly crescendo, the din and bellow of the male wind, leap then from forest into foam, lash about from low into high flames, tipping sound the female chorus, linking all lions, all twitterings to make them nothing. Behold yourself old. As I made to answer, she continued, a little wistfully, yet in a voice clear-cut, good is my overlip, and evil my underlip to you henceforth. For I have taken your soul between my 2 hands, and this shall be as it is spoken. St. James Grove. And so it came to that last day when, she leading by the hand, we went out early in the morning, I heavy of heart, for I knew the novitiate was ended, the ecstasy was over, the life begun. In my woolen shirt and the pale blue necktie my grandmother gave me, there I went with the old queen right past the houses of my friends, down the hill to the river, as on any usual day, any errand. Alone, walking under trees, I went with her, she with me in her wild hair, by Santiago Grove, and presently she bent forward and knelt by the river, the Passaic, that filthy river, and there dabbling her mad hand, she called me close beside her, raising the water then in cupped palm, she bathed our brows, wailing and laughing. River, we are old, you and I, we are old and by bad luck beggars. Lo, the filth in our hair, our bodies stink. Old friend, here I have brought you the young soul you long asked of me. Stand forth, river, and give me the old friend of my revels. Give me the well-worn spirit, for here I have made a room for it. And I will return to you forthwith the youth you have long asked of me. Stand forth, river, and give me the old friend of my revels. And the filthy Passaic consented. Then she, leaping up with a fierce cry, enter, youth, into this bulk, enter, river, into this young man. Then the river began to enter my heart, eddying back cool and limpid into the crystal beginning of its days. But with the rebound it leaped forward, muddy then black and shrunken, till I felt the utter death of its rottenness, the vile breath of its degradation, and dropped down knowing this was me now. But she lifted me, and the water took a new tide again into the older experiences, and so backward and forward it tortured itself within me, until time had been washed finally under, and the river had found its level, and its last motion had ceased, and I knew all. It became me, and I knew this for double certain, for there, whitely, I saw myself being borne off under the water. I could have shouted out in my agony at the sight of myself departing forever, but I bit back my despair, for she had averted her eyes, by which I knew well what she was thinking, and so the last of me was taken. Then she, "Be mostly silent," and turning to the river, spoke again, "For him and for me, river, the wandering. But by you I leave for happiness deep foliage, the thickest beeches, though elsewhere they are all dying, tallest oaks and yellow birches that dip their leaves in you, mourning, as now I dip my hair, immemorial of me, immemorial of him, immemorial of these our promises. Here shall be a bird's paradise. They sing to you, remembering my voice. Here the most secluded spaces for miles around, hallowed by a stench to be our joint solitude and temple. In memory of this clear marriage and the child I have brought you in the late years, live, river, live in luxuriance, remembering this our son, in remembrance of me and my sorrow and of the new wandering. End of section 2.